Ladies, it's often been said that we should not run more than one or maybe two businesses at a time. Well, if you've been listening to me or watching me on social media, you already know how I feel about that. I am a serial entrepreneur to the heart and I have four companies. Doesn't mean I run all four companies myself, but I have four companies. I firmly believe that everybody is entitled to have multiple streams of revenue. And that's something I'm not going to compromise on. But I will say this, it's not for everybody. And I will say it definitely is not for the faint of heart, and you cannot do it overnight. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to have four different businesses. They came over time with planning and when the inspiration hit me. The one thing I did was not let people talk me out of it or try to talk down to me because I chose to have multiple companies. I want to help you make the most of being a serial entrepreneur and give you some tips on how to manage multiple companies without losing your sanity. But first, ask yourself two questions. Am I doing well with the first company enough to be able to start taking on additional projects? And if I do have multiple companies, am I running them by myself and potentially running myself into the ground? Welcome back to another episode of Mogul Chicks Chat. I'm your host, Adrienne Graham. I'm the CEO and proud founder of Mogul Chicks, and that's Chicks with an X. I am a serial entrepreneur and a self-made businesswoman who is a strategic business growth advisor, talent management strategist, published author, mentor, investor, and podcast host. Mogul Chicks helps female founders grow and scale profitable, job-creating companies and eventually get them investment ready. We also help groom them into dynamic leaders and CEOs and build legacy wealth in the process. Mogul Chicks is a mindset, a way of life, if you will, and a blueprint for female founders who want to build a legacy of wealth and a generational business empire. We provide strategic business growth solutions and a platform for resources, mentoring, networks, education, and media that shares our stories. Our mission is to take your company from flat to profit generating to job creating to investment ready. My personal mission is to help you build and run a better company, reimagine the way you do business, and build lasting wealth. Oh, and before I forget, make sure you tag Mogul Chicks using the hashtag Mogul Chicks Chat on social media. Make sure you rate the show and leave a comment. It helps people find us. Share the love, share the love. So you want to run multiple companies. Well, let's get it. First, let me share my experience with it. Now, like I said, it was never my intention to have multiple companies. And when I first started, I didn't even have a clue that I would end up having multiple companies. But yet here I am. When I started my first company in 1994, yes, I keep telling you guys, I am 55 years young and very proud. And when I started that first company, it was all about staffing and HR. Actually, it was all about staffing. That's all I really wanted to do. And it got to a point where I ran that company and I started feeling a little skittish. I don't know if that's the right word, but restless. Yeah, that's a better word. And after a few years, I kind of put that company to the side and shut it down and started something called Empower Me. A lot of you may remember me from my company, Empower Me. And long and short of it is I started that company and ran it for 17 years. It started as one thing and morphed into something totally different. Over that period of time, I launched another staffing and HR firm and I ran the two companies concurrently. Then I got to a point where I said, you know what? I want to get into the e-commerce space, but I didn't know how or where to get into it. So one day I was heading back from mentoring. I used to mentor at Straight Shot Accelerator in Omaha, Nebraska. Ooh, what up to, all of you guys up at Dundee Venture Capital. But I used to mentor, and one particular session, I was at the airport. I think I was delayed. I wasn't feeling very well. I had a bad abscess. And I sat down on my seat waiting for my plane. I happened to look over, and there was a newspaper. So I looked at it, and right there on the front page, it was a different section. It wasn't even the main page, but it was the front page of whatever section this was. I think it was a business section. It was a story about a plus size consignment shop opening up in Omaha, Nebraska. So I said, hey, this is a good idea. I should try this. And that's where Curvy Girl Closet was born. You guys know I still have it. I don't promote it as much, but it is a consignment shop for plus size fashion wear. And we do shoes and purses and whatever. So anyway, that was the journey for that. Then I decided to close my HR consulting company because I got bored with it. It was just empowering me in Curvy Girl Closet. Then life happened, and I ended up shutting down Empower Me. And I wanted to rethink and figure out what I wanted to do, which is how the planning for Mogul Chicks started. And I decided that I was going to start an accelerator of my own for women of color. And it was going to be virtual. During this time, I did a lot of planning and thinking about it because I had, again, been mentoring for accelerator programs. Most recently, at that point, was Straight Shot Accelerator. And my thing was, okay, there's got to be a better way. I won't bore you with all the details. Fast forward, launched Mogul Chicks Academy, expanded it out, started doing consulting, all this other stuff. Media side to it was added. And boom, that's what we have today, Mogul Chicks. Still had Curvy Girl Closet, but kind of on the back burner. Then one day my sisters came to me and we had an idea to start a venture together. Again, in the e-commerce space, and we decided that we were going to do adult, I'm trying to say this in the best way possible, adult toys and accessories or whatever. That later was shut down, and I took over the brand and made it into a lingerie store. I launched that in the pandemic as an e-commerce store, and that morphed from just being e-commerce lingerie boutique online to also virtual pajama parties. And we did Girls Weekend Out. We didn't do one this year, but we're going to be doing one next year. But the Girls Weekend Out, and we have other things that are coming up along with it. And we have a subscription box. So that's 3 companies: Mogul Chicks, Busy's Intimates, and Curvy Girl Closet. And then I decided to get into real estate. Well, actually, I got into real estate before Busy's Intimates, but you get my drift. That's what I'm talking about. 4 different companies. So real estate, Busy's Intimates, Mogul Chicks, and Curvy Girl Closet. And I have some other things in the works now. Now, how do you manage all of that? I know that's the big question. People are probably saying, will she do all that? What's she going on? First thing I did was I sat down and came up with a distinct identity for each individual company. Then I needed to figure out a planning strategy of how each company was going to work and not pull my personal resources, meaning my time and my energy. So these are the things that I did. I sat down and said, okay, number 1, what do I want for each of these companies? And then I wrote out the end goal for each business. I had to make sure that each of the companies were some way related or intertwined with each other, which is a better term, and figured out what my mission was. I'm not going to go into all that now because it's not important. We're talking about things that I did that you can do too. The next thing I did was break down what each company needed. What did it need in terms of marketing? What did it need in terms of sales? What it needed in terms of customer service? What each of them needed in terms of website? What each of them needed in terms of social media presence? For social media strategy, marketing strategy, financial strategy, all of that stuff. I mean, I sat down and really mapped this out for each individual company. And if that's what you're on the path to do, you need to sit down and do this exercise as well. It really opened my eyes, first and foremost, to the teams that it would take to run each of these companies, and the investment that I had to make in time, in the talent, in getting them trained, properly set up, and how I wanted to take each company. Now, let me pause for a moment. One of the things I do with Busy's Intimates now is we have licensing agreements, kind of like mini franchises, if you want to call it. And the attorneys, you guys could chime in for this one, but we have it where people can get their own individual stores. So what I did was I used the McDonald's method, and it's not called that, but that's what I call it, where we give them basically the business in a box under our brand and let them run it. And it's like having our own little sales forces in different areas for people to run the same business, but under their own brand. I'm not going to get into details about that because it's not important for the purposes of this podcast episode. But yes, that's one of the things I did for Busy's Intimates when I sat down and thought about what each company needed. When I mapped out the business journey and set the goal, it was a lot easier for me to really see running these companies and figuring out when and where I personally needed to pitch in. Like, for instance, Mogul Chicks, a lot of the work fell on me. But once I started collaborating with other instructors for Mogul Chicks Academy, got my writing team together for the magazine, got people to interview for the podcast, when I got internal teams to handle social media and for the marketing stuff and for the design and development and all of that, it really made life a lot easier. Right now, what I'm focusing on in Mogul Chicks in terms of talent is finding additional mentors and consultants and advisors that are going to join the team so that I could expand out and work with even more women. But it really mapping out that journey and kind of seeing visually where I wanted each company to go, it gave me a lot of insight, and it made me even more excited about the different companies and making sure that they each had their own identity and none of them were able to cross. I wrote each goal, then a milestone and checkpoints for each goal for each company. And yeah, I miss the mark sometimes, and that's par for the course when you're an entrepreneur, but it gave me a framework. It gave me a path that I needed to take for the companies. Now, have I deviated at times? Absolutely. We all do, because nothing is ever going to go. I mean, I used to tell people back in the day, I never did business plans. Okay. I do sketch business plans is what I call them. So it keeps me honest and it keeps me on track. But 9 times out of 10, at some point, I'm deviating from the script. Okay. The next thing I did was I really sat down and figured out the ideal staff for each business. And let me tell you, it's not the same for everything. One mistake a lot of people make, and I've seen this, is they say, well, I already have a team. I'll just give them double duty. I'll put them on something else in the other business. They just have to know that I'm a multitasking person, and they have to be multitasking. I hired an administrative assistant once, and this was when I was only running 2 companies at the time, and it drove her crazy. In the beginning, she was able to manage it and balance it, but it burnt her out because it wasn't fair. I had a lot on my plate, which in turn put a lot on her plate, and she was juggling both companies. So if you want the best from your team, make sure that your team is specific for each individual company. Don't try to throw all of that on one team at one time. And again, pay them what they're worth. And the other thing I did, the last thing I did was figured out what resources I needed for each company. Of course, for the e-commerce companies, inventory. Duh, that was easy. I found for the lingerie company, I found vendors that had stuff that was cute and affordable and some luxury stuff. I had a little mix of things for everyone. For the consignment shop, I knew that that's something I enjoyed doing, so I had to get out there and find pieces. I had to go do the shopping. Oh, big thing, big deal. Oh, such hard work. No, I loved it. I enjoyed it. But you figure out what resources you need for each company, be that software, be that applications, be that websites, be that inventory. Whatever it is that the company needs, you need to make sure you have them for each company. I specifically got people and resources for each individual company as needed. What type of team you need for, or type of resources you need for an e-commerce or product business is not the same as a service business. So when you're hiring, make sure, and it's going back to the hiring, make sure that you're getting people with that specific kind of experience. So you don't want to hire someone that has retail experience, product experience, to bring them into your service business. Yeah, they may have some transferable skills, but listen, time is of the essence, and you want to build the stellar team. You want to build the team that can get the job done. Then you want to make sure that you're legally setting them all up the way they're supposed to be. Now, some of them are LLCs, some of them are sole proprietors, some of them are partnership. It doesn't matter to me what you choose. Just choose what's right for the business. If it's better as an e-commerce LLC, then that's what you do. If you need to do an incorporation, do that. If you need to do an S Corp, do that. But what I will say is consult with your accounting person and your attorney before you make any decisions. You also have to have them have their own identities. No subdomains on one main domain. Each company, has to have their own identity, their own website, own set of emails, own set of mailing address, own tax ID number, all of that stuff. And then also make sure you sit down with your legal people and get whatever legal documentation you need in place. For example, with the licensing agreements, I sat down with my attorney to do that. Okay. When you choose your vendors, make sure you choose a vendor that understands what you're doing. All of that stuff comes into play. And in case you're wondering, when it comes to email, they each have their own mailing list. They each have their own email newsletter. And yes, I have an email for each of them, info@whatever.com or contact@whatever.com or adrian@whatever.com. I make sure that I have an email for each individual company. I don't let people send me ad hoc email to one address. Does that even make sense? Anyway, it's late and I'm tired, but you get my drift. I think it's very possible to run multiple companies if you plan it out in advance. Don't try to do it just for flex and just because you can. Make sure that it's something you really want to do and you're doing it towards building wealth for your family, not just something to do. Because trust me, it's hard. It's tiring sometimes. Even if I sat down and segmented my calendar and kind of blocked out time for each business, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. So make sure you have the right team, the right tools, the right resources, the right branding, all of that stuff. And I'm telling you, you can do it. So don't let anybody tell you can't have more than one business. It really bugs me when I hear people say, do one thing at a time, focus on one thing at a time. Some of us are not wired like that, but not everybody can do that. So hopefully these tips help. And if you have any questions about running multiple businesses, feel free to ask. And until next time, sit down and figure out exactly what it is that you want to do and what businesses you want to start. I'm Adrienne Graham, CEO and founder of Mogul Chicks, and this has been another Mogul Chicks Chat. I want to help you build a better, more profitable company. Make sure you check out the other episodes, and if you like what you hear, share the love. Pass the link on to your friends. You can find this podcast wherever podcasts are streamed and, of course, on the Mogul Chicks website. Make sure you subscribe, and if you do, leave a comment on any or all of the channels. It helps other people find the podcast too. Sharing is caring. For more information about how we work with you to grow and scale your company, visit us online at mogulchicks.com. Send an email to contact@mogulchicks.com, or you can connect with us all over social media at Mogul Chicks. And remember, that's Mogul Chicks with an X. If you're not yet part of the Mogul Circle, if you're doing over $1 million in revenue annually, what are you waiting for? There's so much value in memberships and the community. If you prefer a good program or trying to move beyond startup phase, check out the Mogul Chicks Academy at mogulchicksacademy.com. I'll catch you on the next episode. And remember, Mogul Chicks are always a step ahead of the crowd, and they're always closing deals. Mogul Chicks make mogul moves and power plays. Your move. Now go be profitable. Bye.